Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, welcoming you to a conversation with a business communication expert, which will help you build your business and enjoy progress and profits. Today, I have a guest that I have benefited from in so many ways, Dusty Porter, head of Porter Media from the greater Atlanta area. Here's what he says about himself on his LinkedIn profile: online content creator, podcaster, and that's what we'll be talking about today, and voice actor. He's got an incredible YouTube video channel that recently climbed, get this, to 227,000 subscribers. And on that channel, Dusty Porter has produced and posted 730 instructional videos. So you can understand why we call this guy the technology guru. He has a podcast channel, Podcasters Unplugged. This is a show for those who want to launch or grow their podcast. And podcasting is our topic today because clearly that's one of his several areas of expertise. Let's welcome Dusty Porter. Good morning, Dusty.
Good morning, Bill. As I said pre-show, you have a way of making me sound a lot better than I probably am, and that's a sign of a great communicator. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I believe this is my second or third time on the podcast, but we're going to be talking podcasting today, one of my passions and one of the things that I am most excited about for the future of technology and content creation as a whole.
And it comes across that you're excited about it. Okay, the first thing I want to know is, and many people would ask this question, somebody comes to you, Dusty, they meet you at a reception, they hear that you do podcasting, and they say to you, you know, I've heard about this podcasting stuff, but I'm not really sure it is or why people do it. What is it? Why do people do it, Dusty?
So it's a way to spread your message in a platform that allows you to have a long duration with the listener or the people consuming your content. So whereas video, which is what I'm known for most through my YouTube Creators Hub show, as I began to create podcasts, I realized the benefits of audio content in tandem with video, or maybe sometimes even before creating video content. What happens with podcast, if you're a business or you're a brand or you are a creator just looking to improve or grow your personal brand, a podcast allows you a long duration of time with a listener, with a potential client, with a potential subscriber, whatever you want to call them. It allows you that intimate time with them in their ears as they're listening to your show on a weekly, a bi-weekly, a daily even schedule, and allows you to get in their ear, excuse the pun there, but on a consistent basis and spread your message, promote your brand, and increase your visibility all across your different networks.
One of the things another one of my technology gurus, Mike Stewart, pointed out to me recently was that General Motors is on 1 million new cars. General Motors is going to have a podcast receptacle there too. So you can access it anywhere. And what are the most popular devices that people use to listen to podcasts?
So right now, it's funny. That's actually a great question to ask right now with the way technology is moving. It's funny. We all have these little computers in our pockets now that are iPhones or Android devices or whatever you're utilizing. And people are able to easily download, and most of these devices come with a podcast app. But what's funny is that what you just mentioned about GM is so true about Ford and Tesla and these new companies. They're including what is called either Apple CarPlay, or they're including some form of app on the new cars they're distributing out there. And anyone buying these new vehicles, Bill, will be able to listen to my show, to your show, just like it was a radio station. And the new age of podcasting is coming. And so I encourage people to get on this train, because as more technology advances, as newer things come to market, we're going to see podcast consumption be made so much easier than it is now. Used to, I know this doesn't sound hard, but you have to go to your phone, you got to download the app, you got to, search for the podcast. Now you're going to be able to get into your new car, go to the podcast app there on the vehicle, search for the type of content you want, and you're good to go.
Okay, we've talked about how to receive podcasts. Let's talk now about how to produce them. What would be some type of simple, affordable technology that we can acquire and learn to use to produce our own podcasts?
So podcast production is probably the most exciting thing that we're going to talk about here today, because a lot of people say to me, well, I don't have the know-how. I don't have experience editing audio. The thought of creating an RSS feed to send off to iTunes and Spotify and Google Play, everywhere you want your podcast to be, and we may talk about that here shortly, but all of that scares people because all the technology jargon. By the way, I've created a business around helping people simplify all of that, which is kind of a lot of what I do on my end. But what you can do is you can download a free software like Audacity, or you can pay for a software from Adobe called Adobe Audition. If you're a Mac user, you have GarageBand on your Mac. If it's an older Mac, on a newer Mac, again, you can download Audacity, which is a free software, and you can tinker around with it. Get a microphone, USB or condenser microphone, whatever is easiest for you. I recommend like a Blue Yeti. You can find those on Amazon for like 70 or 80 bucks. The budget of starting a podcast has decreased dramatically, even over the past 2 to 3 years. And so all of those barriers that used to be in the way realistically aren't there anymore. So if you have something you want to say, get a microphone, download some audio software, and get going. And who doesn't have something to say, right, Bill?
Well, Dusty, you talk about learning the different types of software and so on that we need for technology. I talked about your YouTube channel. As you're aware, not too long ago, I wanted to launch a new podcast channel. And one of the ways that I did it, I went to your YouTube channel, found your instructional video there about Audacity for beginners. And I got to tell you, I took very careful notes on that. I went to Audacity and I've now produced 9 podcasts as a result of that. So I'm one of those who can vouch for 2 things. Certainly your training, and secondly, if a technology novice like myself can learn podcasting, then other people can as well. You mentioned a couple of minutes ago podcasting daily, biweekly, weekly. What frequency do you think is best for those who want to build an audience and sustain it?
So I found that I have two or three podcasts that I do on a regular basis. One of those being, the Podcasters Unplugged show that you've mentioned at the top of the show. But my 2 main shows are 2 shows related to video: YouTube Creators Hub and the TubeBuddy Express show. It's funny because one of the great things about podcasting is that there is no set way that you have to do it. There is no format that you have to go by. The creative space that you can, change things and make things different than what other people do, there's so much freedom there. And I think that word freedom is really corresponds with podcasting, because one of my shows is a 30-minute interview-based show, anywhere from 28 to 35 minutes. I would say when you find a sweet spot for your show, you keep it around that same length. That way, people who are consuming your podcast know what to expect every week when they download your show. If they're going on a run or if they're going on a commute and you normally do 20-minute shows and you all of a sudden hit them with an hour and a half, it's going to kind of be a little jarring for them as they try to consume your content. They have to piece it together and different things like that. And so I encourage—
of course, is what I do with this show, 20 minutes each time.
You do. You keep yours 20 minutes, and that was something you and I talked about in the beginning of your podcast, and we were discussing the implementation of your show. And so with all of that being said, I would encourage you to start with a weekly show, and here's why. People get excited, and they say, oh, I'm going to do a 3 times per week show. They realize how hard it is to do this. There's a lot of work involved in recording. As easy as it is, and as I was talking about previously about starting a podcast, the difficulty lies in actually producing the content. You've got to come up with good topics. You've got to have good guests to come. Oh, sorry. You got to have good guests to come on your show. There's so many things that with podcasting that people think, oh, you get in front of a microphone, you say a few words, you upload to the feeds. It's a little more than that. You and I have been talking about doing this for a while. We've got, scripted out questions that we may or may not go by. There's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes in podcasting. And so I would start with a once a week show, maybe around 30 minutes to an hour. That's about the sweet spot. That's about what normal radio shows people are used to listening to. Go with that for a while. See if you're able to do that, and then kind of expand from there.
What about the preparation method? I suppose a beginning podcaster might think, well, I need to write this out word for word, time it, and then rehearse it, and then try to make sure that even though I've got a script before me, I make it sound as though I'm simply talking it. Now, the opposite of that would be to have an idea, jot down a few points, and then just start talking. What works for you, Dusty, and what might work best for other people, maybe especially beginning podcasters?
So I would encourage against the first method of scripting everything out. One of the things I found that people like in podcasting is transparency, and for you to be who you actually are. They love for the host, like myself, to add a little bit of humor and a little bit of fun and a little bit of lightheartedness. That's who I am as a person, and so I want that to come through the microphone. And so what you want to do as a podcaster is you don't want to sound like a robot reading everything off of a script. You want to sound like you're actually passionate, like you're actually having a conversation, and find a good middle ground. What works for me is I like to have like sample questions like what you sent over to me for this show. And basically, these are possibly some topics that we'll talk about, but we're not going to script out every word, every sentence, every paragraph that we say, because that's not going to sound natural. I have a podcaster that I work with on a weekly basis, and I'm actually trying to get him away from this. He comes from a radio background, and so he reads things like he's reading copy. And so when he reads something, it's like an advertisement. And so his whole show sounds like he's just reading off a script, and it comes across as kind of not really very natural, and it does sound robotic, and it doesn't sound very, I don't know, the word that I'm trying to look for here is it doesn't sound very empathetic. It doesn't sound like you're wanting to have a conversation with the audience, and that is what people respond to best. And so I recommend kind of finding a good middle ground.
Conversation with the audience. That's what a speaker ought to do, and that's what a podcaster ought to do. In fact, Dusty, one of the things that I would recommend is even keep your mistakes in there. For example, one or two shows ago with the Biz Communication Show, I botched a word. Now, I could have stopped and gone back. And then I thought, hey, this is cinema verite. People want to see and hear the real you. And
They do.
if you make mistakes, that's human. And that really draws people to you, because your word robotic, we don't want someone robotic. I can remember, gosh, I guess it was 20 years ago, I was being interviewed on a radio station, probably a 20-minute interview. And the interviewer read, and I do mean read, every question to me. It sounded like it was being read. So I think what we would call sort of the extemporaneous method, have some ideas, but you don't have to go with the exact wording at all. I like to think of it this way. Do you do that if you happen to bump into somebody, a friend at the grocery store? No, you don't have to be scripted. You just go ahead and talk. One more question we have time for. Okay, we've got our podcast going. We've overcome the fear of technology. We've learned how to give a message, conversational style. We've gone through the technical stages of learning how to post it. Where do we post it?
And so this is a great question, because the answer to this is changing as more opportunities become available. Used to be iTunes was the main player, and it still is. It's still going to be the lump sum of the audience that you're getting is going to come from Apple devices. But, more people are changing over to Android devices. And so you want to be on iTunes. You want to be on Google Play. You want to be on Spotify, which is something that's newer now. They're allowing everyone on their platform. And so Spotify is an option. And then with all of these home devices, and I look to my left because I have an Apple home device here to my left, more so like the Alexa, the Amazon devices, they are allowing more and more podcasters to upload their audio as things that they call briefs. And so I mention this briefly to say that in the future, you are going to want to upload to those home devices and things like that as well. But right now, stick with iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and there's some smaller ones like Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, other places. Anchor is another great free platform that allows you to upload podcasting. But again, you've got to go back to the kind of technology of it all. You know, you've got to have an audio host. You got to produce an RSS feed. Somebody like me who does that for people, that you can reach out to someone if that's something that interests you, not me in particular, anyone who does that. But you can basically YouTube it. I personally have a lot of videos on how to do it. Other great creators have videos on how to podcast, how to set one up. And so that's kind of what I would encourage you to do. So those three big players are kind of where you want to start on your podcast.
Dusty, this has been tremendously informative and very, very interesting, very helpful. I know that our viewers and listeners will want to get in touch with you, so please share your contact information.
So I always love fielding questions via email. It's dusty@dustyporter.com. You can go to my website. It's just, like I said there, www.dustyporter.com. I encourage you to go listen to my podcast. You may be listening to this on my podcast because I'm actually going to republish this on my YouTube Creators Hub show, because I always have video creators ask me, Dusty, what are the benefits of podcasting? And I think, Bill, you do a great job of kind of setting the table for these questions for the different interviews that you and I have done. So go check that out. And basically, you can find me all over the internet, just Dusty Porter.
And man, that YouTube channel of yours, Technology Guru 77.
Yeah, I actually have changed the name now to just be my name. And so
okay.
I've found it to where the branding just works better if I just brand everything as my name. And it was hard for me to tell people, hey, you know, I'm Dusty. I want you to get to know me. But my YouTube channel, which is doing really well, is called Technology Guru 77. I wanted to get away from that. I still want to be the technology guru, but I don't want to have that big long name out on the YouTube channel.
So it's Dusty or Dusty Porter?
Either one. I should come up rather early there.
With those 227,000 followers, subscribers. Dusty, now that you've given your contact information, I'm happy to share mine. Biz Communication Guy. And so logically, my website is bizcommunicationguy.com. Invite you to visit my website, sign up for my online weekly newsletter, check my services for corporations and business leaders. Would love to hear from you. Dusty, thanks again so much for being with us. Any closing comments, advice for those of us who are podcasting or who want to?
If you are on the fence, I encourage you to break down that barrier, punch through that door. I think that once you start a podcast, you're going to see all the benefits. And I would say, if you've just started a show or you're about to start a show like we just talked about, don't just produce 2 or 3 episodes, get discouraged by the numbers. Don't look at the analytics. Just push through that, upload the episodes, and keep creating the content. The audience will come.
Like anything else worthwhile, it takes time.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Dusty Porter. And thanks all of you who were joining us on video and on podcasts. Certainly, we want you to be with us next week for another exciting show and a highly informative guest. I'm Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy.